It was 6 o'clock in the morning when the phone rang like an emergency alarm. I opened my eyes, still heavy with sleep, and fumbled for the cell phone on the nightstand. It was George, my neighbor and friend forever. His voice sounded frantic, almost screaming on the other end of the line. "Eleanor! Eleanor! There are men at your house. They are tearing down the walls. There are trucks. There is noise. They are destroying everything." I froze in bed for a second, trying to process what I had just heard. Men? Tearing down walls? In my house? I jumped up, my heart pounding against my chest so hard I could feel it in my temples. I did not even put on my slippers. I ran out of my bedroom barefoot, wearing only my nightgown, my messy hair falling over my face. And then I heard it. The noise. A constant, metallic, violent pounding, as if someone were smashing something with a giant hammer. I ran down the hallway, and what I saw knocked the air right out of my lungs. The door to the master bedroom, the room that had belonged to my husband and me for 35 years, was wide open. And inside, there were 4 men in yellow hard hats, work gloves, and holding huge tools. One of them was holding a sledgehammer and smashing it against the wall with such force that pieces of drywall were flying everywhere. Another was marking lines on the floor with red chalk. A third was loading a pile of broken bricks into a wheelbarrow. "What are you doing?" I screamed, with all the strength I had. My voice came out broken, full of panic. The men stopped and looked at me as if I were the intruder, as if I had no right to be there. One of them, the tallest one, took off his hard hat and approached with a clipboard in his hand. "Good morning, ma'am. We are expanding this room according to the contract. We are going to knock down this wall, extend into the bathroom, and make a full master suite with a walk-in closet." I stared at him without understanding. Contract? What contract? I had not signed anything. I had not authorized anything. "There must be a mistake," I told him, trying to stay calm, even though inside I felt like I was falling apart. "This is my house. I did not hire any construction crew. You have to leave right now." The man frowned and checked his papers. "No mistake, ma'am. It is all right here. The client who contracted the service is named Lucas Miller. He says he is the owner of the property and wants to expand for his wife. They are getting married soon." From what he explained, I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach with a steel fist. Lucas, my son, my only son, the boy I had raised alone after my husband died 20 years ago, the man for whom I had worked day and night as a seamstress, sewing until my fingers bled, just to give him everything he needed. "Lucas is not the owner of this house," I said, my voice trembling. "I am the owner. This property is in my name." The foreman extended the clipboard to me. "It says here he has authorization. Look, here is your signature, Mrs. Eleanor Miller." I took the papers with shaking hands and looked at the signature at the bottom of the document. It was my name. It was my last name. But it was not my signature. Someone had forged my handwriting. Someone had used my identity to authorize the destruction of my own bedroom. And that someone could only be one person. "How much does this work cost?" I asked, still looking at the paper. "The total budget is $85,000, ma'am. Your son already paid the down payment of $30,000. The rest is paid upon completion." $85,000. A fortune. Where had Lucas gotten that money? He worked in an accounting firm. He earned a good salary, but not enough to throw that kind of money at a renovation, and certainly not on a house that was not his. "Stop the work," I ordered with all the firmness I could muster. "Right now, do not touch anything else until I speak to my son." The foreman shook his head. "I cannot do that, ma'am. We have a signed contract. If we stop the work without justification, your son will have to pay a penalty for breach of contract. Those are the rules." "I do not care about the rules," I said, raising my voice. "This is my house, and I am ordering you to stop." But they did not listen to me. They put their hard hats back on and continued banging, demolishing, destroying. I felt tears filling my eyes, but I was not going to cry in front of those men. I was not going to give them that satisfaction. I went back to the guest room, the small one at the back where I had been sleeping since I became a widow, and looked for my cell phone. I dialed Lucas's number with trembling fingers. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Again. Nothing. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the noise of the demolition coming from the other side of the house, and tried to understand what was happening. How had it come to this point? How could my own son, the person I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, do something like this? Then I remembered. 3 months ago, Lucas had asked me for the house documents. He said he needed to do some paperwork at the bank, something related to his job, and that he needed a copy of the deed as proof of address. I had given them to him without thinking twice. I trusted him. He was my son. Why would I not trust him? And now I understood. He had used those documents for this, to pretend he had rights over my property, to convince the construction company that he could authorize an $85,000 renovation on a house that was not his. The noise outside intensified. I heard a terrible crash, as if something heavy had fallen, then shouts, then more banging. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, trying to calm down, but it was impossible. My heart was beating so fast I thought I was going to faint. I dialed Lucas again. This time he answered on the 3rd ring. "Mom, good morning. Did something happen?" His voice sounded calm, unconcerned, as if he had no idea what was happening. "Did something happen?" I repeated, feeling the fury starting to replace the shock. "Lucas, there are men demolishing my bedroom. They say you hired them. They say you signed a contract." It is true. There was silence on the other end. A long, uncomfortable, guilty silence. "Mom, I can explain," he said finally, with a voice that tried to sound calm but trembled at the edges. "It was a surprise. Brittany and I are getting married, and we thought it would be better to expand your room, make it more modern, more comfortable for when we come to visit you." "A surprise?" I almost screamed. "Demolishing my house without my permission is a surprise?" "Do not look at it that way, Mom. It is an improvement. The house needed a renovation anyway. And besides, you have a lot of space. You do not need a room that big just for yourself." I could not believe what I was hearing. I could not believe those words were coming out of my son's mouth. "Lucas, I built that room with your father 35 years ago," I said, trying to control the tremor in my voice. "You were born there. I spent nights taking care of you there when you had a fever. Your father and I planned our future there, and you come to tell me I do not need it? Mom, do not be dramatic. They are just walls. We can make something much better. Brittany has great taste in decoration. She picked out some incredible finishes. You will see how beautiful it turns out." Brittany, of course. This had her stamp all over it. Since Lucas started dating her 2 years ago, everything had changed. Brittany was a 28-year-old woman, pretty, always wearing heavy makeup, always in expensive clothes and perfect nails. The first time she came to my house, I saw her looking at everything with disdain. She touched the curtains as if they were dirty, wrinkled her nose at the furniture I had bought with so much effort, and whispered something to Lucas that I did not catch, but that made him laugh uncomfortably. "I do not want Brittany picking anything in my house," I said firmly. "I do not want this work done. I did not authorize anything, and I am going to make them stop right now. Mom, I already paid a $30,000 down payment. If you stop the work, I lose that money. Do you understand? $30,000 thrown in the trash." "Where did you get $30,000, Lucas? You do not have those savings." Another silence. Longer this time. I could hear his breathing on the other end of the line. "I took out a loan," he admitted finally. "At the bank. But do not worry. I can pay it. I have everything calculated. A loan of $85,000 to remodel a house that is not yours? It is going to be our house. Mom, when Brittany and I get married, we are going to live with you. That is why we need more space. She cannot live in a house that is so outdated." There it was. The truth finally coming to light. It was not a surprise. It was not a gift. It was an invasion. They wanted to keep my house, transform it, make it theirs, and push me into a corner. "Nobody asked me if I wanted you two to come live here," I said, feeling the rage rising in my throat. "Nobody asked me if I agreed to this work. You forged my signature, Lucas. That is a crime." "I did not forge anything, Mom. I just put your name because the house is technically in your name, but I am your son. I have a right. You have no right. This house is mine. I paid for it with my work. Every brick, every window, every door. I paid for it all sewing clothes until my fingers ached. Your father and I built this house with sacrifice. You have no right to come and destroy it. Okay, he said, with that condescending tone he had started using lately. I am coming over. We will talk calmly. You will see that this is the best for everyone. He hung up before I could answer. I stood there looking at the phone, feeling my hands shake. I went back out to the hallway. The noise had diminished a little, but I could still hear voices, movement, the dragging of materials. I peeked into the door of my old bedroom, and what I saw broke my heart. The wall dividing the room from the bathroom no longer existed. It was just a huge hole with wires hanging down and exposed pipes. The floor was covered in rubble. The closet, where I kept my late husband's clothes, the ones I had never had the courage to give away, was open and empty. The boxes with photos, letters, and memories were piled in a corner as if they were trash. "Where are my clothes?" I asked the foreman who was passing by carrying a bag of cement. "Where are my things?" "We took them out and put them in the back room, ma'am. Do not worry, everything is safe." I ran to my current room and, sure enough, there they were. Boxes and boxes piled up, without any care. I opened one and found my husband's shirts, wrinkled, some with dust. I opened another and saw our wedding photos. Photos of when Lucas was a baby, our anniversaries. Everything jumbled. Without respect, without consideration. I sat on the floor, surrounded by those boxes, and for the first time in many years, I cried. I cried for my husband who was no longer here. I cried for the house we had built together. I cried for the son I had raised, who now treated me as if I were a nuisance in my own life. I do not know how much time passed, maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour. The only thing I know is that at some point I heard the front door open and Lucas's voice calling me. "Mom, where are you?" I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and stood up. I was not going to let him see me weak. I was not going to give him that satisfaction. I left the room and found him in the living room, looking around with an expression that mixed guilt and discomfort. But he did not come alone. By his side was Brittany, wearing an emerald green dress that probably cost more than I earned in a month, high heels, and that fake smile she always used with me. "Hi, Eleanor," she said with that sweet and poisonous voice. "Oh, you cannot imagine the excitement we have about the remodel. The house is going to look divine. You will see." I looked at her without saying anything. Lucas approached and tried to take my arm, but I pulled away. "Mom, I know you are upset, but if you let me explain." "There is nothing to explain," I interrupted him. "I want you to stop this work right now. I want those men out of my house, and I want you to return the property documents to me." Brittany let out a little laugh, a giggle that made my blood boil. "Eleanor, do not be old-fashioned. Houses need to be modernized. This place looks like a museum. We just want to help you. Nobody asked for your opinion," I told her, looking her straight in the eyes. "And nobody gave you permission to meddle in my life." Her smile disappeared. Lucas stepped between us as if he feared I was going to hit her. "Mom, do not talk to Brittany like that. She is going to be my wife. She is going to be part of the family. Then let her be part of the family in her own house, not in mine." Lucas sighed as if I were a spoiled child who did not understand reason. "Mom, let's be realistic. You are 63 years old. This house is too big for you alone. It has 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a huge backyard. Why do you need all this? We are going to live here, and we are going to take care of you. Isn't that what you want? Don't you want to have your son close?" "I want to have my son close when my son respects me," I replied. "Not when he comes to invade my space and treat me as if I were a burden." Brittany let out that dismissive giggle again. "Oh, Eleanor, do not get like that. Nobody said you were a burden. On the contrary, we are including you in our plans. Many mothers-in-law would love for their children to include them like this." I looked at her with such intensity that I saw her smile falter for a second. This woman had no idea what she was saying. She had no idea what it meant to build a life from scratch, to work until you bleed, to raise a son alone, to keep a house standing for decades. "Lucas," I said, turning to my son and completely ignoring Brittany, "I am going to ask you only once. Did you use the house documents I lent you to apply for the loan?" I saw his face go pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Brittany took his arm as if giving him support. "Answer me," I insisted. Mom, I needed collateral. The bank was not going to lend me $85,000 without solid collateral. But do not worry. I am going to pay everything. Nothing is going to happen to the house. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. It could not be true. It could not be that my own son had put my house, my only security, up as collateral for a loan without even telling me. You put my house up as collateral? I asked with a thread of a voice. Without my permission. Technically, I had your permission because I signed the papers, Lucas said, avoiding my gaze. The bank just needed to verify that I had access to the property. You forged my signature. That is fraud. I did not forge anything, Mom. I just adapted the documents. You are my mother. The house is eventually going to be mine anyway. I just anticipated the process. I could not believe what I was hearing. This was not the boy I had raised. This was not the son who had learned to walk in this very living room, who had played in the yard, who hugged me when he had nightmares. This was a stranger with my son's face. The house is not going to be yours eventually, I said with a firm voice, because I am going to live many more years, and when I die, I will decide what I do with my property. But while I am alive, this house is mine and mine alone. Brittany snorted. Oh, for God's sake, how selfish! I mean, he is your son, your only son. Who else are you going to leave the house to? A cat? To whomever I want, I replied without even looking at her. I can leave it to a foundation, to a distant cousin, or burn it down if I feel like it. It is my house. Lucas ran his hands over his face, frustrated. Mom, you are exaggerating. Look, the work already started. I already paid the down payment. If I stop it now, I lose that money and I also have to pay a penalty. Is that what you want? For your son to lose $40,000? I want my son to stop lying to me. I want him to respect my house. I want him to understand that he cannot do whatever he feels like with my property. Brittany approached me with that fake smile again. Eleanor, understand. We are getting married in 3 months. We need a place to live. Rents are super expensive, and you have this huge house with so much wasted space. We are just being practical. Practical would be for you to find your own place, I replied, or for you to have asked me before demolishing my bedroom. It is just that we knew you were going to say no, Brittany blurted out without thinking. Immediately she covered her mouth, realizing what she had just admitted. Lucas glared at her, but the damage was done. Now everything made sense. They had planned it. They knew I would oppose it, so they decided to do it behind my back. Destroy first, ask for forgiveness later. Or rather, not ask for forgiveness at all. I want you to leave my house, I said in a low but firm voice. Both of you. Now, Mom, we cannot leave. We have to supervise the work. The workers need instructions. I do not care. Get out. Brittany grabbed her purse with a dramatic gesture. Oh, Lucas, let's go. It is not worth arguing with someone who does not understand reason. You will see when we are married and living here. She will change her mind. Those words stuck in me like knives. Living here? Were they planning to move in even if I said no? Did they think they could simply invade my house and I was not going to do anything? Lucas looked at me with a mixture of disappointment and anger. Mom, you are making a mistake. I just want the best for you. The best for me is for you to leave me in peace. They left, slamming the door. I heard Lucas's car start and drive away down the street. I stood in the middle of the living room, still trembling, still trying to process everything that had just happened. The noise of the construction continued. The men kept working as if nothing had happened. I went back to the foreman. I need a copy of the contract, I told him, and I need the name of the company you work for. He handed me a card and a copy of the document. I read it carefully. There it was, the forged signature, the authorization that I had never given, and at the end, in small print, a clause stating that in case of default on payment, the property used as collateral would pass into the hands of the bank. My house, my home, the place where I had built my life. It was at risk because of my son's irresponsibility. I picked up the phone and called the only person who could help me at that moment. Karen, my cousin, a lawyer, the smartest woman in the entire family. She answered on the second ring. Eleanor, what a surprise. How are you? Karen, I need your help. It is urgent. I told her everything. From George's call to Lucas and Brittany's visit, I heard her take a deep breath on the other end of the line. "That is forgery and fraud," she said with a serious voice. "It is a felony. You could press charges against Lucas." "I do not want to put him in jail," I said, feeling tears threaten to come out again. "He is my son. I just want to stop this." "I understand. Give me 2 hours. I am going to review the documents and see what we can do legally. Meanwhile, do not sign anything, do not authorize anything, and if possible, record any conversation you have with Lucas or the construction company." We hung up. I sat on the living room sofa, that olive green sofa I had bought at a garage sale 15 years ago, and that Lucas always criticized for being ugly and old. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe, tried to calm down, but it was impossible. How had I reached this point? Where had I failed as a mother? I remembered when Lucas was little, when he hugged me and told me I was the best mom in the world. I remembered when he graduated from college and dedicated his degree to me. I remembered all the times we had laughed together, cooked together, talked about his dreams. At what moment had all that been lost? At what moment had my son stopped seeing me as his mother and started seeing me as an obstacle? The answer was clear: Brittany. Since she had entered his life, everything had changed. I remembered the first time Lucas introduced me to her. It was 2 years ago, on a Sunday afternoon. He arrived with her holding hands, smiling from ear to ear, with that excitement of someone who has just found something special. Brittany was wearing a pale pink dress, high heels, and a perfume so strong I could smell it from the door. She greeted me with 2 kisses on the cheeks, those fake kisses that barely brush the skin, and said in a sing-song voice, "Oh, Eleanor, so nice to meet you. Lucas has told me so much about you." I made coffee and cookies. We sat in the living room, that same living room where I was now trying to process this nightmare. Brittany looked at everything with those critical eyes, evaluating every corner, every piece of furniture, every detail. She touched the cream-colored curtains that I had sewn myself and said, "How vintage." But her tone was not of admiration. It was of disguised mockery. During that visit, Brittany talked non-stop. She talked about her job at an expensive clothing store, about her friends who traveled to Europe, about the restaurants where she liked to have dinner. Everything that came out of her mouth was an exhibition of her supposed glamorous life. And every now and then she looked at the house and dropped comments like, "Oh, this house has potential. With a good renovation, it could look incredible." Or, "What a waste to have so much space and not take advantage of it." Lucas looked at her captivated, as if every word she said was pure wisdom. He did not notice how she was subtly insulting me. Or maybe he did notice and simply did not care. From that day on, Lucas's visits changed. Before, he came alone. We sat and talked. He told me about his job. We ate together. But after meeting Brittany, he always came with her. And she always found something to criticize. That the walls needed paint. That the furniture was out of fashion. That the yard was neglected. That the kitchen was too small. One day, about 6 months ago, the 3 of us were having dinner. I had made pot roast, Lucas's favorite dish since he was a child. Brittany barely tasted it, made a face, and said, "Oh, I do not eat so many carbs. I am watching my figure." Then she looked at Lucas and added, "Babe, we should look for our own place, a modern apartment, with new finishes, something that is ours." Lucas nodded but then looked at me and said, "It is just that apartments are very expensive, Mom. We have been looking at options, but everything is out of our budget." That was when Brittany cast the bait. "And why don't we stay here? After all, Eleanor has this huge house. We could remodel, modernize everything, and all live together. It would be perfect." I put my fork down on the plate. "This house is already how I want it," I said, trying to sound kind but firm. "It does not need remodeling." Brittany smiled with that smile that did not reach her eyes. "Well, one can always improve things, right? Besides, if we are going to live here, we need to make adjustments. I could not live in a place so antique." "Nobody is inviting you to live here," I said. And this time I did not try to sound kind. Lucas tensed up. Brittany opened her eyes wide as if I had slapped her. "Mom, do not be like that," Lucas said. "Brittany is just trying to help. I do not need her help." That night ended badly. They left early. Lucas did not even say goodbye with a kiss like he always did. During the following weeks, he hardly spoke to me. When I called him, he answered with monosyllables. When I asked him if he could come to dinner, he always had an excuse. And I knew it was because of Brittany. She was pulling him away from me. But what I did not imagine is that they would go this far, that they would be capable of doing this, of entering my house, of destroying my memories, of putting my property at risk. The sound of the phone pulled me out of my thoughts. It was Karen. Eleanor, I reviewed the documents you sent me by photo. This is serious. The signature is clearly fake, and the fact that Lucas used the house as collateral without your consent is fraud. We can stop the work with a court order. We can also report him criminally if you want. How long does it take to get the court order? If we go to the courthouse early tomorrow, we could have it in 24 hours. But I need you to answer something. Eleanor, are you sure you want to do this? He is your son. A report like this could have serious consequences for him. I remained silent. He was my son, the boy who had grown up in this house, the man who carried my blood, but he was also someone who had lied to me, who had forged my signature, who had put my home at risk. I want to stop the work, I said finally. I want to protect my house, but I do not want to put him in jail. Is there a way to do this without him ending up with a criminal record? We can attempt a settlement. We stop the work. We demand that he returns everything to how it was and that he withdraws the loan with the house as collateral. If he accepts and complies, we do not press charges. But if he refuses, we will have no choice. Okay, do it. Perfect. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. I will pick you up. We are going to the courthouse together. I hung up the phone and felt a small relief. At least there was a plan. At least there was someone on my side. I got up from the sofa and went to the kitchen to make myself some tea. I needed to calm down. I needed to think clearly. While I waited for the water to boil, I heard someone knocking on the door. I went to open it and found George, my neighbor, with a worried expression on his face. Eleanor, is everything okay? I heard a lot of shouting a while ago. George was 72 years old. He was a widower like me, and had been a neighbor since we moved into this house. He and my husband had been good friends. They played chess on Sundays, fixed things together, helped each other. After my husband died, George continued being a good neighbor. Always attentive, always respectful. Come in, George. I appreciate you alerting me this morning. We went into the living room. I offered him coffee, but he declined. He sat on the sofa and looked at me with concern. What is happening, Eleanor? Why are they demolishing your house? I told him everything. He listened in silence, shaking his head, frowning more and more. When I finished, he sighed deeply. That girl Brittany always seemed like trouble to me, he said. I have seen her arrive here with Lucas. The way she looks at everything, as if she were evaluating how much it is worth, and the way she talks to you, with that fake tone. I do not like it. Lucas is blinded, I said. He does not see who she really is. Men in love are fools, George said with a sad smile. I was a fool once too. But your son is crossing a very dangerous line. This thing he did is not only disrespectful, it is illegal. I know. Tomorrow I am going to stop the work legally. Do you need me to declare anything? I can testify that you never authorized this work. I saw when the workers arrived this morning. I saw your face of shock. Any judge will realize that this was done without your consent. Thank you, George. You do not know how much your support means. He stayed a while longer. We talked about trivial things to distract me. When he left, it was almost night. The workers had finished their day and had left. The house remained in an unsettling silence, interrupted only by the dripping of a pipe they had left exposed. I went to my old bedroom, or what was left of it. It was unrecognizable. The walls my husband and I had painted together no longer existed. The hardwood floor he had installed with his own hands was covered in dust and debris. The ceiling had a huge hole where there used to be a light fixture we bought on our 10th anniversary. Everything that represented our life together had been destroyed in a single morning. I knelt in the middle of the rubble and picked up a piece of wall. It still had part of the wallpaper we had chosen when Lucas was 5 years old. I remembered that day. The three of us went to the store. Lucas was jumping between us, excited because we were going to make the house prettier. He chose a paper with small, peach-colored flowers. He said he liked it because they looked like clouds. My husband and I spent a whole weekend pasting it up, laughing when it was crooked, celebrating when it finally looked perfect. I pressed the piece of paper against my chest and let the tears come out. I no longer cared about appearing strong. I no longer cared about anything. I cried for my husband, who was no longer here to defend me. I cried for my son, who had turned into someone I did not recognize. I cried for all the years of sacrifice that seemed not to have been worth it. I do not know how long I was there, kneeling among the debris, crying. The only thing I remember is that at some point, I heard my phone ring. I got up with difficulty, my knees hurt, and went to answer. It was an unknown number. "Mrs. Eleanor Miller?" asked a formal male voice. "Yes, this is she. This is Mr. Reynolds from the National Bank. I am calling to confirm that we received your loan application for $85,000 with a mortgage guarantee. We need you to come in tomorrow at 10 in the morning to sign the final documents." I felt the world stop. I did not apply for any loan. There was a confused silence on the other end. "Ma'am, I have your application here. It is signed by you. It includes a copy of your ID and the deed to your property. I repeat that I did not apply for any loan. My son did it without my authorization. He forged my signature." Another silence. This one longer. "Ma'am, that is a very serious matter. If what you say is true, we need you to come to the bank tomorrow without fail, and I recommend you bring a lawyer. I will be there." I hung up the phone with trembling hands. The situation was worse than I thought. Not only had Lucas hired the work without my permission, he had gone to the bank. He had forged my signature. He had used my identity to get $85,000. If he could not pay that loan, the bank would take my house. My home. The only asset I had. I dialed Karen's number immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Eleanor, what happened?" I told her about the call from the bank. I heard her taking notes on the other end of the line. "This is worse than I thought," she said with a serious voice. "He did not just forge your signature on a private contract. He forged it on bank documents. That is financial fraud. Eleanor, your son could go to jail for this. I do not want him to go to jail. Karen, he is my son. I understand. But you have to protect yourself. If the bank proceeds with the loan and Lucas does not pay, they are going to take your house. Do you understand the gravity? You could be left on the street." The words hit me like rocks. Left on the street, at my 63 years, after working all my life, after sacrificing everything to give my son a good life. The idea was so absurd, so unfair, that it almost did not seem real. "What do I do?" I asked with a broken voice. "Tomorrow we go to the bank. We take all the documentation. We prove the signature is fake. We stop the disbursement of the loan. And then we file a formal report against Lucas. There is no other way. Eleanor, listen to me. I know he is your son. I know you love him. But what he did is unforgivable. And if you do not stop him now, he is going to end up destroying you completely. Sometimes, love means setting boundaries, even when it hurts." I knew she was right. In the bottom of my heart, I knew Karen was right, but accepting it was heartbreaking. "Okay," I said finally. "Let's do what we have to do." That night I could not sleep. I lay looking at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house. Every creak reminded me of the years I had lived here. I remembered when we moved in, 8 months pregnant, helping my husband carry boxes even though he told me to rest. I remembered when Lucas took his first steps in the hallway. I remembered the Christmases, the birthdays, the Sunday afternoons watching movies together. This house was not just a property. It was my entire life, contained in walls and ceilings. And my own son was willing to destroy it for a woman he barely knew for 2 years. At 6 in the morning I got up, showered, put on my best gray dress, and put on makeup for the first time in weeks. I needed to look strong, even though inside I felt torn to pieces. Karen arrived at 7:30. She brought a briefcase full of documents and an expression of determination that gave me some confidence. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." First, we went to the courthouse. Karen presented all the papers, explained the situation to the judge. I showed my ID, signed several documents, answered questions. The judge, a man of about 50, with thick glasses and a serious expression, reviewed everything carefully. "Mrs. Miller," he said finally, This is very clear. The signature on these documents does not match your real signature. I am going to issue an immediate stop work order. I am also going to order a fraud investigation. You understand that this could result in criminal charges against your son. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. And you still wish to proceed? I looked at Karen. She nodded slightly. I took a deep breath. Yes, I wish to proceed. The judge signed the documents. The order will be executed today. I am also going to notify the bank regarding the situation. I suggest you speak with them as soon as possible to clarify that you did not authorize that loan. We left the courthouse at 9:30. We had half an hour to get to the bank. Karen drove, while I looked out the window, watching the city pass by, feeling like I was in the middle of a nightmare from which I could not wake up. We arrived at the bank just in time. Mr. Reynolds received us in his office, a small space with beige walls and a desk full of papers. He was a man of about 40, bald, with a dark green tie and a worried expression. Mrs. Miller, counselor, he greeted us. Please, take a seat. We sat down. Karen took all the documents out of her briefcase and put them on the desk. Mr. Reynolds, my client never applied for the loan that you processed. The signature was forged by her son, Lucas Miller. Here you have samples of my client's real signature. As you can see, they do not match the signature on the loan documents. The banker took the papers and compared them carefully. I saw his expression go from confusion to alarm. This is very serious, he said. If what you say is true, it means we processed a fraudulent loan. We will have to stop everything immediately and open an internal investigation. You also have here the court order suspending the work that was being done with that money, added Karen, handing him another document. Mr. Reynolds read it and nodded. I understand. I am going to freeze the loan right now. The $30,000 that were already dispersed will have to be returned. Otherwise, we will proceed legally against Mr. Lucas Miller. And my house? I asked with a trembling voice. Are you going to take it from me? Your house is safe, Mrs. Miller. Given that the signature was forged, the loan is invalid. You have no obligation to pay. The obligation falls completely on the one who committed the fraud. I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. My house was safe, at least for now. However, continued Mr. Reynolds, I must inform you that the bank is going to press charges against Mr. Lucas Miller for bank fraud. It is protocol in these cases. I nodded. There was no turning back. The consequences of Lucas's actions were starting to materialize. We left the bank around noon. Karen took me to eat something, but I was not hungry. I just wanted to go home and face what was coming. I knew that at any moment, the court officers would arrive to stop the work, and I knew Lucas would find out, and I knew he would come looking for me. When we arrived at my house, there was a police cruiser parked outside. 2 officers were speaking with the construction foreman, who was gesturing frustratedly while pointing at the house. Karen and I got out of the car and approached. Mrs. Eleanor Miller? Asked one of the officers, a tall man with an impeccable uniform. Yes, that is me. We have the order to suspend this work immediately. The workers must leave and cannot return until further court order. The foreman approached me with an angry face. Ma'am, this is a disaster. We have a signed contract. If we suspend now, your son is going to have to pay huge penalties, plus the $30,000 of down payment that we can no longer return because we already bought materials. That is not my client's problem, Karen intervened with a firm voice. The contract was signed fraudulently. Any loss must be claimed from the one who signed the contract, not the owner of the property. The foreman cursed under his breath. He took his phone and walked away, making a call, probably letting Lucas know. The other workers started packing up their tools, murmuring among themselves, clearly annoyed by the situation. In less than 20 minutes, the whole crew was gone. The house was left in silence, a heavy silence, loaded with tension. The officers handed me a copy of the court order and left too. Karen and I went inside. Do you want me to stay with you? She asked. Lucas is going to come at any moment, and he probably won't be calm. Stay, please. We sat in the living room to wait. We didn't have to wait long. 15 minutes later, we heard a car brake sharply outside, then hurried steps, then violent banging on the door. Mom, open the door, we have to talk. Lucas's voice sounded desperate, furious. Karen stood up, ready to intervene if necessary. I took a deep breath and went to open it. Lucas entered like a tornado. His face was red, eyes bloodshot, hair messy. Behind him came Brittany, with her heels clicking against the floor, face perfectly made up but with an expression of contained fury. "What did you do?" screamed Lucas. "Did you call the police? Did you stop the work? You are crazy." "I am not crazy," I replied with a calm I did not feel. "I am protecting my house, your house, always your house. And what about me? Do I not matter? I just lost $30,000, Mom. $30,000 I do not have. Do you know what that means? It means you made irresponsible decisions," I said. "It means you forged my signature. It means you put my house at risk without my permission." Brittany stepped forward, pointing her finger at me. "You are selfish, a selfish old woman who does not want to see her son happy. You know what? We do not need you. We are going to get married anyway, and we are going to get our own house. A real house, not this old piece of junk." Karen stepped between us. "Miss, I am going to ask you to calm down and watch your words. You are on private property and can be charged with trespassing if you do not leave when asked." Brittany looked at her with contempt. "And who are you? The old lady's lawyer? How pathetic." "I am Mrs. Miller's lawyer, yes. And I inform you that your fiancé is being investigated for bank fraud and forgery of documents. If you had knowledge or participated in these acts, you could also face charges." I saw Brittany's face lose color. Lucas turned to me with an expression of disbelief. "You reported me? Me? Your own son?" "You reported yourself when you decided to forge my signature," I replied. "I am just protecting what is mine. You are my mother. You are supposed to support me. You are supposed to be on my side. And you are my son. You were supposed to respect me. You were supposed to take care of me, not destroy my house and put my assets at risk." Lucas ran his hands over his face, desperate. "You do not understand. The bank is going to sue me. They are going to demand that I return the $30,000 plus interest, plus penalties. We are talking about almost $45,000. I do not have that money, Mom. I have nothing." "You should have thought about that before," I said. And although my voice sounded firm, inside I was breaking. Seeing my son like that, desperate, scared, broke my heart. But I knew I could not give in. Not this time. Brittany took Lucas by the arm. "Babe, let's go. It is not worth it. Your mom already proved she does not care about you. We will solve this ourselves." But Lucas pulled away from her roughly. "Solve what, Brittany? With what money? You do not have savings." "I do not have savings. I am going to have to sell my car. I am going to have to beg for loans. I am going to be in debt for years because of you." "Because of me?" Brittany raised her voice, surprised. "You were the one who said your mom was not going to find out. You were the one who said everything was going to go perfectly. You were the one who signed the papers. Because you would not stop pressuring me. Because every day you told me my mom had a lot of space. Because every day you made me feel like a failure for not being able to give you the house you wanted." I saw the dynamic between them change. The masks were starting to fall off. The perfect relationship they had been showing was cracking under the pressure. "I never asked you to do something illegal," Brittany defended herself. "I just said it would be nice to have more space. You made the decision to forge your mom's signature because you manipulated me, because you made me believe it was the only way for you to be happy. Oh, please, do not blame me for your decisions. You are an adult, Lucas. You should know that actions have consequences." Lucas looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time, as if he was finally seeing who she really was. And what he saw he did not like. "You know what, Brittany? You are right. Actions have consequences. And I am going to pay the consequences of listening to someone like you." Brittany opened her mouth to answer, but Lucas interrupted her. "I think you should go." "What?" "Leave. Go to your house. I need to think." "Lucas, do not be ridiculous. We are in this together." "No, Brittany. I am in this. You were just here for convenience, for the house, for the space, for the material things. But now that everything fell apart, where are you? Blaming me, pulling away, looking for how to save yourself." Brittany looked at him with narrowed eyes. "You are a coward, a loser. And you know what? You are right. I do not need this. I do not need to be with someone who cannot even get a decent house. She turned around and left, slamming the door. The sound echoed throughout the house. Lucas stood there, looking at the closed door, with slumped shoulders and an expression of total defeat. He turned to me. This time there was no fury in his eyes, only sadness, only regret. "Mom," he said with a broken voice, "I ruined everything. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to hug him, like when he was a child and had nightmares. I wanted to tell him everything was going to be fine. But I couldn't. Not yet. Yes, Lucas. You ruined everything. You ruined my trust. You ruined my house. You ruined our relationship. And you did it for someone who just proved she is not worth it." He let himself fall onto the sofa, covering his face with his hands. "I do not know what to do, Mom. I have a huge debt. The bank is going to sue me. I am going to lose everything. And the worst part is that I deserve it." Karen approached him. "Mr. Miller, what you did is serious, very serious. But if you cooperate, if you return what you can, if you show genuine remorse, the consequences could be lesser." Lucas lifted his face. His eyes were red, cheeks wet. "Lesser how? I am going to go to jail." "It depends," Karen replied. "If your mother decides not to press criminal charges and reaches an agreement with the bank, you could avoid jail. But you will have to pay back every cent you used, plus penalties, plus damages. And you will have to repair everything you destroyed in this house." Lucas looked at me. "Mom, I do not have that money. I do not have a way to pay it." "Then you will have to find a way," I said. The words hurt me coming out, but I said them anyway. "You will have to sell your car. You will have to look for a second job. You will have to make sacrifices, just like I made for you your entire life." "I know," he whispered. "I know, and I am sorry. I am sorry I disappointed you. I am sorry I was so stupid. I am sorry I let Brittany manipulate me." "Brittany did not force you to do anything, Lucas. You made the decisions. You forged my signature. You put my house at risk. Yes, she pressured you, but you could have said no, and you didn't." He remained silent, nodding slowly. He knew I was right. Finally, he was facing the reality of his actions. Karen opened her briefcase and took out several documents. "I prepared an agreement. If you sign it, you commit to returning all the money to the bank within a period of no more than 2 years. You also commit to repairing all damages caused to the property, leaving it exactly as it was before. And you renounce any rights to this house, present or future." Lucas took the papers with trembling hands and read them. I saw his eyes scan every line, every clause. When he finished, he looked up at me. "If I sign this, I lose any possibility of inheriting the house. Even when you die, the house won't be mine." "That is correct," I confirmed. "Because I no longer trust you, Lucas. Because you proved that you are capable of doing anything for self-interest. And I am not going to allow you to put at risk what cost me so much to build again. And if I change, and if I prove that I can be better, then maybe, over the years, we can rebuild our relationship. But for now, I need to protect myself. I need to set boundaries. I need you to understand that what you did has permanent consequences." Lucas lowered his gaze. He took the pen Karen offered him and, after a moment of hesitation, signed the document. Every stroke seemed to hurt him physically. When he finished, he dropped the pen on the table and covered his face again. "I have lost everything," he murmured. "My fiancé, my money, my house, my mother's trust, everything." "You lost what you should never have had," I said. "Brittany did not love you. The money was not yours. This house was never yours. And my trust, that you did lose, but you can recover it if you really change. How am I going to pay $45,000 in 2 years? It is impossible." "Nothing is impossible when you really want something," I replied. "I paid for this house working as a seamstress. I sewed from 6 in the morning until 10 at night. My fingers bled, my back hurt. But I did it because it was important to me, because it was my future. If this is important to you, you will find a way." Karen put the signed documents in her briefcase. "Mr. Miller, I recommend you contact the bank tomorrow yourself. Explain the situation. Propose a payment plan. The more proactive you are, the better you will look to them. Lucas nodded without looking up. He looked defeated, destroyed. A part of me wanted to console him, but another part, the part that had been betrayed, the part that had seen her bedroom destroyed, the part that had feared losing her house, that part stood firm. "You can go," I told him softly. "Tomorrow we will talk about how you are going to repair the damages to the house." He stood up slowly, as if his whole body weighed him down. He walked to the door, stopped, turned around. "Mom, I really am sorry. I know you do not believe it now, but I am sorry." "I know, Lucas. But being sorry is not enough. You have to prove it with actions." He left. Karen and I stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "You did the right thing, Eleanor." "It does not feel like the right thing," I admitted. "It feels terrible. That is true love sometimes. It is not complacent. It is not permissive. It is firm. It sets boundaries. It demands respect. What you just did was an act of love, even if it does not look like it." Karen stayed a while longer, helping me organize some documents, explaining the next legal steps. When she finally left, it was already night. I was left alone in the house, in the middle of the disaster that remained. I went to my old bedroom again. The rubble was still there, the destroyed walls, the memories shattered. But now, looking at it with other eyes, I saw something different. I saw an opportunity to rebuild, not only the room, but my life. The following days were a whirlwind. Lucas sold his car. It was a black sedan he had bought just a year ago, and of which he was so proud. He sold it for less than it was worth because he needed the money fast. With that, he paid a part of the debt to the bank and negotiated a payment plan for the rest. He also got a second job. He worked at his accounting firm from 8 to 5, and then he went to a restaurant where he worked as a server from 6 in the evening until midnight. On weekends, he came to my house to repair the damages he had caused. The first time he came, a Saturday morning, he arrived in work overalls, gloves, and borrowed tools. He did not say much, he just got to work. He started removing debris, cleaning, preparing the surfaces to be able to rebuild. I watched him from the door. He looked tired. He had deep circles under his eyes. He had lost weight. He moved more slowly. But there was something different about him. A humility I had never seen before. A silent determination. George, my neighbor, also came to help. He brought his own tools and taught Lucas how to do things correctly, how to mix the cement, how to level the walls, how to install electrical wires safely. "Your father was good at these things," George told him one day while they worked together. "He helped me fix my roof once. We spent a whole weekend up on a ladder, cursing the heat, but we did it. He would have wanted you to know how to do this." Lucas stopped, with the trowel in his hand, and nodded. "I should have learned from him when he was still alive. I should have spent more time with him instead of playing video games." "You cannot change the past," said George. "But you can learn from it." Weeks passed. The room slowly began to take shape again. The walls were rebuilt. The wiring was fixed. The pipes were repaired. Lucas worked every weekend without fail. Sometimes he arrived so tired he could barely hold the tools, but he did not complain. He did not ask for breaks. He simply worked. I prepared food for him. At first, I did it in silence, leaving a plate in the kitchen for him to eat whenever he wanted. But over time, I started eating with him. We sat at the table, the same place where we had shared so many meals over the years, and talked. A little at first. Just superficial things. But gradually, the conversations became deeper. "Did you hear anything from Brittany?" I asked him one day. He shook his head. "She got married 2 weeks ago, to a 50-year-old businessman. He has a huge house, 3 cars, a boat, everything she always wanted. And how do you feel about that?" He shrugged, relieved. "Honestly, I realized she never loved me. She only loved what I could give her, or what she thought I could give her." "And you loved her?" He stood thinking. "I think I was in love with the idea of her, of having a pretty girlfriend, of pretending I had a perfect life. But real love, no. Real love does not ask you to betray your family. Real love does not manipulate you or make you feel inadequate." I nodded. At least he had learned something from all this. One day, 2 months after everything began, Lucas arrived with a surprise. He brought a large box wrapped in yellow paper. "What is this?" I asked. "Open it." I unwrapped the box carefully. Inside was a large frame with an enlarged photo. It was a photo from my wedding. My husband and I, young, smiling, full of hope. I wore an ivory dress with lace on the edges. He wore a brown suit he had rented because we did not have money to buy one. "I found it in one of the boxes," Lucas said. "It was a little damaged, but I took it to get restored. I thought you could hang it in your room when it is finished." I felt tears filling my eyes. "It is beautiful, Lucas. Thank you." "Mom, I know what I did is unforgivable. I know I destroyed something that was sacred to you. But I want you to know that every wall I rebuild, every floorboard I fix, I do it thinking of Dad, thinking of you guys, thinking of the home you built, and I am trying to honor it." I hugged him. For the first time in months, I hugged him. It was a long hug, necessary. I felt him trembling in my arms and realized he was crying. My son, the 35-year-old man who had made a terrible mistake, was crying like the boy he once was. "I am sorry, Mom," he sobbed against my shoulder. "I am so sorry. I was an idiot, selfish. I did not value anything you did for me." "Shh," I consoled him, stroking his hair like I did when he was little. "It is over. You are repairing the damage. You are proving you can change." We stayed like that for several minutes. When he finally pulled away, he wiped his tears with the back of his hand and smiled sadly. "I have to keep working. There is still a lot to do." And so we continued. Week after week, Lucas arrived early every Saturday and Sunday. He worked until it got dark. George kept helping when he could, teaching him techniques he had learned over his 72 years. And I watched as my bedroom, my sanctuary, rose from the ashes. But not everything was physical reconstruction. We were also rebuilding something deeper, our relationship, the trust that had been broken. During those afternoons of work, Lucas told me things he had never shared. He told me about how he had felt pressured since Brittany entered his life, about how she constantly compared him to other men who had more money, better cars, bigger houses. "She made me feel like I was never enough," he confessed one day while sanding a wall. "There was always something else we needed, something else we had to have. And I, like a fool, thought that if I managed to give her everything she asked for, finally she would be happy. Finally, she would really love me. Love does not work like that, son. True love does not set conditions. It does not demand material things. It does not make you feel inadequate. I know that now. I wish I had known it before." He also talked to me about his job, about how he felt trapped in an office crunching numbers all day, about how he had set aside his true dreams because he thought that was the right path, the safe path, the path expected of him. "And what were your true dreams?" I asked him. He stopped, looking at his hands stained with paint. "I always wanted to be a teacher. Teach math to kids. See their faces when they finally understand a difficult problem. But you worked so hard to pay for my accounting degree that I felt I could not disappoint you by choosing something that paid less." I felt a lump in my throat. "Lucas, I never wanted you to sacrifice your dreams for me. I worked hard to give you options, not to force you to take a specific path." "I know, Mom. But at that moment I did not see it that way. I saw all the effort you made and thought the only way to honor it was to have financial success. And look where that got me." During those months I also learned things about myself. I learned that I had been too permissive with Lucas, that I had given him everything he asked for without teaching him the value of effort, that in my attempt to be a good mother, to compensate for his father's absence, I had created a son who expected everything to come easily to him. Karen came to visit me often. She brought me reports from the bank. She kept me informed about the progress of Lucas's payments. One day, 4 months after everything began, she arrived with good news. "The bank is satisfied with Lucas's payments," she informed me. "He has been punctual every month. He has shown responsibility. They decided not to press criminal charges." I felt enormous relief. My son would not go to jail. He would have the opportunity to rebuild his life without that weight on his shoulders. "There is something else," Karen continued. "Lucas asked me to give you this." She handed me an envelope. I opened it and found a handwritten letter in Lucas's handwriting. "Mom," it said, I am not good at expressing my feelings in person, so I decided to write to you. These months have been the hardest of my life, but also the most valuable. I have learned more working on your room every weekend than in all my years of college. I have learned about responsibility, about consequences, about the true meaning of hard work. But above all, I have learned about you. I have learned that you are stronger than I ever imagined, that you protected what was yours not out of selfishness, but out of survival, that you set boundaries not because you did not love me, but because you loved me enough to let me face the consequences of my actions. I still have a long way to go. I still owe almost $20,000 to the bank. I still work 2 jobs and barely sleep 5 hours a night, but for the first time in my life, I feel proud of myself. Not for what I have, but for what I am doing, for the man I am becoming. Thank you for not giving up on me, even though you had every reason to. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to repair what I broke. I love you, Lucas. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I read. Karen put her hand on mine. He is a good kid, Eleanor. He made a terrible mistake, but he is learning. He is growing. I folded the letter carefully and put it in the envelope. I know, and I am proud of him. Months kept passing. The room was almost finished. The walls looked impeccable, painted the same cream color my husband and I had chosen 35 years ago. The hardwood floor had been restored, polished until it shined. The windows had new curtains that I had sewn myself, using fabric similar to the original. One Saturday afternoon, Lucas installed the last piece. It was a ceiling light fixture, not the same one we had before. That one had been destroyed in the demolition, but one very similar. He found it in an antique shop and used part of his salary to buy it. When he turned it on, the room filled with a warm, soft light. We stood in the center, looking around. Everything was ready. The room had been resurrected. It looks beautiful, I said with a trembling voice. Like it should have always looked, replied Lucas. I am sorry it took 6 months to fix it. I am sorry you had to sleep in the small room all this time. It does not matter. The important thing is that it is ready now. We hung my wedding photo on the main wall, right above where the bed would go. My husband and I, young and smiling, watching over the space we once shared. That night, after Lucas left, I moved back into my room. I made the bed, arranged the pillows, placed my things in their spot, and when I finally lay down, I felt a peace I had not felt in months. I closed my eyes and could imagine my husband there with me. I could feel his presence. I could hear his voice telling me that everything would be okay, that our son had learned the lesson, that our house was safe. The next day, Sunday, Lucas arrived earlier than usual. He brought a bag with pastries and coffee. I thought we could have breakfast together, he said shyly. Like before. I smiled. I would love that. We set the table. We sat down. And for the first time in what seemed like years, we had a light conversation, without tension, without resentment. We talked about the weather, the news, the neighbors, simple things, normal things, things I missed. Mom, he looked at me, surprised. What? Why? Because I was not happy. Because I realized life is too short to spend it doing something you hate. I enrolled in a program to get my teaching certification. It is an intensive 1-year course. Meanwhile, I will keep working at the restaurant to pay my debts. Lucas, that is wonderful. But will you be able to pay everything working only at the restaurant? Tight, but yes. Besides, the work at the restaurant is not that bad. I have learned to cook. I have met interesting people. And above all, when I get home every night, I know I am one day closer to my true dream. I looked at him with pride. This was the son I knew. The son who had been hidden under layers of social pressure, of wrong expectations, of toxic influences. Finally, he was emerging. I am proud of you, I told him. He smiled. Thanks, Mom. That means more to me than you imagine. Months continued to pass, and with them came changes I never imagined. Lucas continued visiting me every Sunday without fail. He no longer came to repair anything. The room was completely restored, but he came simply to spend time with me. We cooked together. We watched movies. We talked about his progress in the teacher certification program. He told me about his classes, about the kids with whom he did his student teaching, about how their faces lit up when they understood a difficult concept. It is incredible, Mom, he would tell me with shining eyes. Yesterday, an 8-year-old boy finally understood fractions after weeks of trying. He started jumping for joy, and I felt like my heart was going to explode with happiness. This is what I should have been doing all along. Seeing my son find his purpose, his true vocation, healed something inside me that I did not even know was broken. It was not just that he had repaired my room, he had repaired his life, and by doing so, he had repaired our relationship. One day he arrived with news. I finished paying the debt to the bank. Everything. Down to the last cent. I do not owe them anything anymore. I hugged him tight. It had taken a year and a half, working tirelessly, sacrificing his comfort, living in a small rented apartment with the bare minimum. But he had achieved it. He had faced the consequences of his actions with dignity and responsibility. I am so proud of you, Lucas. Your father would be proud. I wish I could tell him, he replied with sadness. I wish I could ask for his forgiveness for not listening to him more when he was alive. He knows, son. Somehow, he knows. During that time, there was also news about Brittany. George, who was always up to date with the neighborhood gossip, told me that her marriage to the businessman had not lasted even a year. Apparently, the man discovered she was spending his money on frivolous things and hiding debts from him. He had kicked her out of the house, and now Brittany was living with her mother, working at a department store, without the luxurious lifestyle she had coveted so much. See? George told me. People who only look for material things always end up empty. Your son was lucky to get rid of her when he did. I did not feel satisfaction hearing that. Only pity. Pity for someone who had never learned that the truly important things in life cannot be bought. One Sunday afternoon, Lucas arrived with someone. It was a young woman, maybe 30 years old, with chestnut hair tied back in a ponytail, green-framed glasses, and a genuine smile that lit up her face. She wore jeans and a simple orange blouse, nothing showy, nothing pretentious. Mom, this is Sarah. She is a teacher too. She works at the same school where I do my student teaching. Sarah extended her hand, but I pulled her in for a hug. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Miller. Lucas has told me so much about you. I hope good things, I said, smiling. The best. He told me about your strength, about how you protected your home, about how you taught him an important lesson on responsibility and consequences. You are an admirable woman. I liked her immediately. There was something authentic about her, something real. She did not have Brittany's fake smile, nor that way of looking at the house, evaluating its value. She simply looked at everything with genuine curiosity and respect. This is the room, Lucas said, taking her to my bedroom, the one I rebuilt with my own hands. Sarah observed every detail. The walls, the floor, the lamp, my wedding photo hanging on the wall. It is beautiful, she said sincerely. You can tell the love you put into every detail, Lucas, and you can tell the love your parents put here originally. The three of us sat in the living room. Sarah told me about her job, about the children she taught, about her family. She was from a humble family. Her parents were merchants at a local market. She had studied with scholarships and working part-time. She understood the value of effort. She understood sacrifice. And are you two dating? I asked, going straight to the point. Lucas blushed. Well, we are getting to know each other. We have been friends for 3 months. And 2 weeks ago I asked her to be my girlfriend officially. And I said yes, added Sarah, smiling. But I gave him one condition, that he introduce me to his mom. Because I think you can know a lot about a person by how they treat their family. I liked this woman more and more. And what do you think now that you know me? I asked curiously. I think Lucas is very lucky to have a mother like you. And I think I would also be lucky to have you as a mother-in-law one day, if things work out between us. There was no presumption in her words. There were no rushed plans. Only honesty and hope. That was all I could ask for. Months passed. Lucas graduated from his certification program and got a job as a math teacher in a public school. His salary was not high, but it was enough. And above all, he was happy. He arrived to visit me every Sunday with stories about his students, about his achievements, about the challenges of the day-to-day. Sarah became a regular presence on our Sundays. She helped me cook, told me funny stories, showed me photos of her students. Sometimes she brought her mother, a cheerful lady named Martha, who sold flowers at the market and who taught me to make apple pie the way she made it, with a recipe that had been passed down for 3 generations in her family. 1 year after meeting Sarah, Lucas came alone one Sunday. He seemed nervous, restless. He sat in front of me in the living room and took a small velvet box out of his pocket. "I am going to ask Sarah to marry me," he announced. "But first, I need your blessing." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring with a small stone, nothing showy, but beautiful in its simplicity. "It is not an expensive ring," he explained, "but I bought it with my own money I earned honestly. And I know Sarah is going to love it not for its price, but for what it represents." "It is perfect," I said with tears in my eyes. "And of course you have my blessing. Sarah is exactly the type of woman I always hoped for you. Someone who loves you for who you are, not for what you can give her." I learned from my mistakes, Mom. I learned that true love does not demand, does not manipulate, does not destroy. True love builds, supports, respects. And that is what Sarah and I have. They got married 6 months later in a small and beautiful ceremony. There were no luxuries or ostentation, only close family, true friends, and lots of love. Sarah wore a simple cream dress that had belonged to her grandmother. Lucas wore a gray suit he had bought on sale. But both shone with a happiness that no money could buy. During the ceremony, Lucas dedicated some words to me. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me when I deserved for you to do so. Thank you for teaching me that actions have consequences, but also that redemption is possible. Thank you for showing me what true love means. Love that sets boundaries when necessary. Love that demands respect. You are my hero. You always will be." I could not contain the tears. I looked toward the sky and felt that my husband was there, watching our son finally become the man we always knew he could be. Lucas and Sarah did not want to live in my house. They rented a small apartment near their schools. It was modest, with barely 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room that also served as a dining room. But it was theirs. They had gotten it with their own effort, and they filled it with love and laughter. They visited me every Sunday without fail. Sometimes they brought Martha. Other times George came. We all gathered in my house, in that living room that had seen so much pain but also so much healing, and shared food, stories, and affection. One Sunday, 2 years after their wedding, Lucas and Sarah arrived with news. Sarah was pregnant. They were going to have a baby. "It is going to be a boy," announced Sarah with shining eyes. "And we want to name him after his grandfather, after the man who built this house and this family." I cried with joy. My husband would have a grandson who would carry his name, a grandson who would grow up listening to stories about him, a grandson who would learn the true values he represented. 9 months later, little James was born. He was perfect, small, with Lucas's brown eyes and a wrinkled little face that reminded me so much of my husband Arthur. When I held him in my arms for the first time, I felt that everything, absolutely everything that had happened, had been worth it. "Hello, little James," I whispered to him. "Your grandma is going to tell you so many stories. She is going to talk to you about your grandpa, about your dad, about this house. And she is going to teach you that the most valuable thing in life is not the things you have, but the people you love and the respect you give and receive." Lucas watched me with tears rolling down his cheeks. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." "No, son, thank you. For proving to me that people can change, that mistakes can become lessons, that true love, love with boundaries and respect, always triumphs." Today, as I write this, James is 6 months old. Lucas is a dedicated teacher who transforms lives every day. Sarah is a wonderful wife and mother. And I, at my 65 years, sleep every night in my restored bedroom, surrounded by memories of the past and hopes for the future. My house is no longer at risk. My son learned his lesson. My family is complete again. And every time I look at my wedding photo hanging on the wall, I feel my husband smiling at me, proud of how I protected our home and how I saved our son from himself. The walls that were almost lost are now stronger than ever, and so am I.